It's locked, all right. Behavior is similar to the infected William Bishop. Must be the same strain. This sickness moves faster than influenza. Balls of Mars, fortifiers. As popular as they are ineffective. But they do contain iron tartrate, and that might prove itself useful. It's locked. This key will surely grant me access to the basement. These skulls feed from corpses and the husks of animals. They're not after blood. It's locked. Mr. Connor's injuries don't match the report. I'd better look into this. Traces of a pinkish foam at the corner of the lips. Some sort of drug overdose, perhaps? Multiple abrasions and scarring on the arms and legs. Old and distinctive injuries of a sailor or a fisherman. The chest was originally opened to perform the operation. The sutures are clean, but the chest has been reopened. A puncture over the left lung, possibly a chest tube insertion. Not the cleanest work, but I think it was successful. Signs of internal bleeding. So, Dr. Tippett's anesthetics were incorrectly dosed, causing the patient's death. And then he tried to operate on him again. Tippett has made an egregious error. It's time we talked. Tippett has made an It's locked, all right. Skulls can be so ferocious. I'm not sure I can defeat them without becoming stronger. To drink blood is so tempting. Sodium hypochlorite. Dangerous to administer, but efficient in the proper dosage. It's locked.
you again.
Good evening, Miss Howcroft. How are you tonight?
I need blood, Doctor. Warm, rich, vibrant blood.
I'll leave you, Mistress of... Good evening, Milton.
Good evening.
I'd like to see your...
Wise choice, Dr. Reed.
Good evening, Nurse Brett.
Good evening, Doctor.
Tell me what Dr. Tippett did. I know his mistake caused a patient's death.
If I had not covered up his error, Dr. Tippett would have been fired from this hospital. I could not let that happen.
You can't allow your emotions to dictate your conduct concerning patients, Nurse Brannigan.
Look around you, Dr. Reed. Do you really think we can afford to lose a brilliant practitioner like Dr. Tippett's in our situation?
Perhaps you did it with the best intentions, Nurse Brannigan, but you took a great risk. Must I remind you that a man died?
You mean you've never made a mistake? Never covered your tracks? Come on, Doctor. I wasn't born yesterday.
Goodbye, Nurse. Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor.
Goodbye, Milton.
At least I'm mistress of the car.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening.
Pepper, I know you're very close to Milton Hooks.
Yes? Milton Hooks is my man. If you want to report me for that, just feel free, Doctor.
I have no intention of reporting you, Nurse Hawkins. But are you aware of the risks?
The rules say I won't be allowed to work as a nurse anymore. But here at the Pembroke, we break rules all the time.
Is he worth the risk?
Hey, I'm no perfect woman, and Milton is not the finest bloke. But we do our best to get by. That's all any of us can hope for nowadays.
Pepper, are you sure you want to leave this hospital?
To become a nurse was a little girl's dream. But in the end, I don't feel that useful. I want more. I want to make things change.
You should be proud of what you've achieved. This hospital represents hope for many people in need of help.
Maybe you're right. But at the moment, I feel like we're just a cemetery waiting room.
What steps are you prepared to take to feel more useful?
I don't know yet. My sister believes that the real fight is in the streets nowadays. Maybe she's right. Maybe this is what I must do.
And what about Milton Hooks? Does he share your point of view?
For Milton, any change means more comfort and more peace. I disagree.
If you feel that saving lives is not useful enough, perhaps it means that you've lost faith.
On the contrary, my faith has never been stronger. Maybe we are all just too proud to face up to the fact that science cannot compete with God.
Goodbye, nurse. Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
Do you know that Nurse Hawkins is thinking of leaving the hospital?
That's not a surprise. We've talked about it already.
Does it not bother you?
Sometimes I think she may be right. We should run away while we can. Question is, where can we go? Where is it safe?
Goodbye, Milton.
Another night.
There's a hospital. That's Pembroke nowadays.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Doc.
Goodbye, Nurse.
See her again.
Good evening, Mr. Elwood.
Evening, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Elwood.
You disgust on every street corner. A daily routine.
Hello again, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Mr. Hampton. We'll talk again later. I cannot enter. Good evening, Dr. Strickland.
And good evening to you, Dr. Reed. Can I be of any help?
What do you think of Dr.
It's a shame.
with the influenza and...
I believe...
So you believe...
Dr.
Goodbye, Doctor.
As for me,
This hospital seems to be...
Finally, you've returned, Doctor. Did you find anything of value?
Yes, nurse.
You've worked your first miracle, Doctor. Now, this patient here needs immediate treatment.
Duty calls. When the storm has passed, I'll show you how to mix the remedy yourself with the same basic ingredients.
Many thanks, Doctor. When you've finished, you ought to report to Dr. Swansea in his office. He's been looking for you. Seemed pressing.
You always knew the words to calm the children, Ellen.
This hospital
As for
seems to
me...
be falling apart. But in the circumstances...
Good evening, Mr. Fiddick.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Any news about my operation?
Goodbye for now.
Not let you down, my boy.
It's locked, all right.
sure we're making a difference? You always knew the words to calm the children.
Dr. Reed,
As for now...
What can you tell me about...
this hospital was founded to help the East...
Can you be more specific?
Well, veterans...
What can you tell me about the epidemic, Nurse Crane? I've been out of touch since I've come back to England.
Everyday folk don't know how bad it is. The papers certainly won't tell them. Not as long as the war is raging on, anyway.
News on the front stated that the Spanish flu was under control, at least in Britain.
It seemed to be for a while, but that was only last summer. It returned with a vengeance just over a month ago.
For how long have you been working here, Nurse Crane?
I first volunteered at the Pembroke in 1911, a few months after Dr. Swansea was appointed.
And before you arrived here?
If you must know, this was my first job.
Well, Dr. Swansea certainly has confidence in your abilities. Are you in charge of the nursing staff?
Not in an official capacity, but the Pembroke doesn't always work above board, so to speak.
How is the duty roster organized?
Everybody works until they can't. If there's time, they'll eat a meal and shed a silent tear.
What about medical protocols?
Dr. Reed, we don't have the money and resources here at the Pembroke like they do in the West End. We do what we can.
I'll see you later, Nurse.
With you at our side, Dr. Reed, I know you will fail and survive.
I cannot enter.
This hospital seems to be falling apart. But in the circumstances, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, madam. Can I help you?
It's my son who needs you, sir.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. How can I help your son?
I'm Beatrice Goswick, mother of Mortimer Goswick. Could you check on him, please, Dr. Reed? I've heard much of your talents as a physician.
What can you tell me about yourself, Mrs. Goswick?
Not much to say. Just take care of my Mortimer and I'll cover all the expenses. That's all that matters.
Are you really that rich? Most of the patients here are of a more humble origin, if I may say so.
Yes, thanks to my husband. May he rest in peace. I can cover any needed medical expenses.
May I ask if you have an occupation, Mrs. Goswick?
I'm a teacher by profession. I teach young women who are more ambitious about their futures than their families.
What do you think of your reception here? Any complaints?
I have had the uttermost reservations about this hospital since we arrived. But we had no other choice, considering the state of emergency.
Is there something in particular that's bothering you?
Some of the staff were not especially welcoming. I suspect they're not accustomed to dealing with patients of such social standing.
Tell me more about your arrival at the Pembroke Hospital. What gave you such a bad first impression?
The ambulance driver was quite rude, for a start. And that nurse, Miss Hawkins, seems to have quite a dubious attitude.
What do you mean?
She managed to secure a bed for my son despite the epidemic. It was a relief, but it wasn't cheap.
I'm all right. Don't waste your time.
She charged you for a bed?
Yes, and I paid without question, considering the urgency of the situation.
I share your concern, Mrs. Goswick. Be sure that I'll talk to the people involved.
I don't expect compensation, Dr. Reed. But I'm aware such behavior would not be tolerated in other hospitals.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed. Can I help at all?
No.
Really? Why are you here, then?
I don't want to talk. My throat hurts too much.
I suppose that this pain is the reason you're here. Is someone taking care of you?
Yes. And no.
Could you at least tell me your name, sir?
Mortimer. Mortimer Goswick.
Do you need any help?
I'm afraid I may, sir. I don't mean to be a burden.
You are not a burden, sir. Healing you is my responsibility.
And you have my gratitude for that.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'm sure you realize a doctor and his patient have to communicate, sir. Would it help if I gave you some paper and a pen?
Not really.
I see. Then maybe it's not just your throat that hurts, Mr. Goswick. Perhaps your sore throat is just the consequence of something more hurtful.
Yes, maybe. But I don't want to talk or even write about it now.
Why did your mother have you hospitalized here? She seems convinced this is a bad hospital.
My mother just wants the best for me. She won't rest while I'm here. She'd go all the way to hell and back to help me.
Pembroke Hospital may look unorthodox, but rest assured you're in good hands here.
It's not me you have to convince, Dr. Reed. It's my mother.
Is your mother bothering you? As your doctor, I can ask her to leave you alone if you would prefer.
That's tempting, Doctor. But you have no idea what my mother is capable of. She would tie herself to my bed if you asked her to leave.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Goswick.
I don't want to talk, Doctor.
I have to go now, sir.
Good evening, sir. Doctor.
As for me, what a blundering idiot.
Good evening, Doctor.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
Nice, sweet girl. Reads me like a book. I never could keep anything from her.
I'm quite busy right now, Dr. Reed.
Thank you for your time.
Please, has anyone seen my daughter?
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Such a... Please show me what... Of course. It's just drink...
It's locked, all right. It's locked. I cannot enter.
Please, Jonathan, come in. Fascinating, is it not? In the last decade, so many mysteries have been brought to light with our microscopes. The human body, biology's penultimate frontier. The more we explore its boundaries, the less we're able to trace a clear line between life and death. You, my friend, have a foot in both countries. The view must be vertiginous.
It's at least as vertiginous as chatting about vampires with you, I would say.
This must be all so new to you. This area of town, the hospital, a brand new life. How stimulating it must be.
I wish I could share your enthusiasm, Dr. Swansea, but my condition defies scientific categorization. Undead? Unalive? Immortality defies logic.
I cannot express my thrill at this serendipitous turn of events. The world's most eminent specialist in blood transfusions, a vampire. One might say a gift from heaven.
I'm a dead man. I was murdered. Now I'm a murderer. Tell me how this is a gift.
Forgive me. I've been an admirer of your work for a long time, and now you are so much more than a brilliant physician. And please, call me Edgar.
I'm not some doe-eyed student, Edgar. I understand we both have something to gain from this relationship.
Very well. I have a task for you, Jonathan. Something that will require all your newfound skills.
Please, go on.
The Pembroke only survives through the generosity of our benefactors. Unfortunately, our main donor has found herself in a bit of a bind. Now, if you could help her out...
A spokesman or politician is what you need. That's not my calling. And until I come to understand what has happened to me, I require discretion.
Discretion is in order, Jonathan. Lady Ashbury has recently received rather indelicate correspondence that, if revealed, would jeopardize her position.
And you would like me to eradicate this threat?
By the stole, of course not. I would just like you to pay her a visit. Her ladyship is certainly near the tents outside, tending the sick. You can't miss her. Look for someone impossibly delicate.
Accepted. I'll see what kind of trouble Lady Ashbury is in.
Do you need something, Jonathan?
I have just a few...
Then ask away.
You mentioned something about a secret society. A brotherhood, if I recall. Could you elaborate?
Certainly. I've been a member of the Brotherhood of St. Paul's Stole for several years. We are pledged to monitor and report vampire activity in England as impartial scientific observers.
That explains your nightly wandering.
I feel it wasn't mere coincidence that led us to that part of...
Yet you don't fear me.
The Brotherhood has studied your kind for centuries.
Yet you...
The Brotherhood has studied your kind for centuries. We believe you are as supernatural as a lion is to a gazelle.
Since you seem quite the expert...
As men of science, our first step is always to start with what we...
The sun. The morning follow...
You will find there is very little that can kill a...
Must I...
You are a vampire. You feed.
Since I'm the one working for you...
Well, for many years, we have been the only
Where do we stand?
But to be honest, we cope on a day-to-day basis.
What do you expect?
What we need is hope. You were...
What do you expect of me?
What we need is hope. You were a soldier. This is a war. This white coat's still a uniform. We fight to help the poor, the sick of the East End, the forgotten.
The man we pursued and slew in the canning factory, William Bishop, I believe, was he a vampire?
He was a Skald, technically speaking. The debate rages as to their classification. Some think them a subspecies of vampire, others something else.
How do Skalds come into existence?
The name means slave. The etymology may indicate that they are a lesser species of vampire. From what I know, vampires tend to despise them.
Just for clarity, what differences are there between myself and a Skal?
A Skal is easier to eliminate, Jonathan, even if they remain formidable foes for the unprepared. Vampires... Now, vampires exist beyond the mortal realm.
We'll see each other again. It's locked.
You always knew the words to calm the children.
The flu took my dear wife, Emily. I take comfort knowing we'll soon be together again.
Mr. Rainfield, that's no way to talk. You're in good hands here, and we'll be up again soon enough. Now do me a kindness and get some sleep. I'll be back round later.
Your words are kind, the blessings of an angel. You're the sweet, sweet Lady of Mercy.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. It's a pleasure to see you again. You seem surprised. Dr. Swansea has brought me up to speed concerning your recent appointment to Pembroke Hospital.
You're a the lady who saved me that night, before vanishing into thin air. I remember you from the pub with Dr. Swansea.
Indeed. Allow me to introduce myself formally this time. My name is Lady Ashbury. I remember you well, in spite of the brevity of our encounter.
Apologies. You've taken me by surprise. I'm very happy to see you.
The pleasure is mine, Doctor.
I hope you're more disposed to answer my questions now.
You must have countless questions, but our rather urgent matter first. Swansea has explained. My cover, if you prefer, has been compromised.
Pardon my boldness, Your Ladyship, but I have questions concerning this.
As a newborn, your hunger for...
I'm a scientist.
I will gladly answer every question.
Have any of the patients given you trouble?
These poor souls have so little left to live for. I do my best to ease their pain.
I gather you have found an arrangement satisfying both ethical and corporal concerns.
I was brought up not to snigger at my own jokes, Dr. Reed.
Dr. Swansea has commissioned me to be your agent in this matter. You could start by explaining what's amiss.
These past insufferable weeks, I've been the victim of extortion. I've made a first payment, but the blackmailer grows greedy. I must refuse his most recent demands.
If we're dealing with an ordinary criminal, surely you've the means to deal with it yourself, if I may.
As immortal tradition doth dictate, all fangs and hypnotic eyes ablaze, the blood would run like a river. That's what I hope to avoid. Violence has a tendency to spiral out of control.
Who would be so foolish as to threaten you? A kindred spirit.
Even if it were the case, and I highly doubt it, a vampire would have asked for something more valuable than money. My suspicions lean toward a patient or their family.
What are your expectations? Please be precise.
As the newly appointed surgeon of this hospital, you are in an excellent position to ask innocent questions and deftly learn the identity of my blackmailer.
Please continue. Every detail is essential. I'm your man.
My embarrassment in this matter is eclipsed only by my shame at having put the hospital at risk. The threat from our anonymous scoundrel is clear. A list of dates. My visits coinciding with the dates of suspicious patient deaths due to massive blood loss.
I'll take care of it. Do you know where I should start?
If that was the case, I'd settle the matter myself. You could talk to our local gossip, Harriet Jones. Not a pin drops here without her hearing about it.
I'll meet that woman now.
My life, as others know, is in your hands, Dr. Reed. I'm sure of your discretion, but I do fear your powers of persuasion will be put to the test. When this is resolved, I'll be your obligé. I'll answer all questions in regards of your condition.
Perhaps I should have considered the offer from that Cadigan fellow.